with a sense of hallowed ground. I was reminded being at the Nova site today of the time that when I was a little kid, I mean, probably 10, 11 years old, something like that, when my parents took us to Gettysburg. Those were back in the days when, and, as an elementary school kid, we had to learn the Gettysburg Address. It's not that long. Had to learn the address by heart. And I wasn't old enough to really understand the Civil War, not slavery, and I got that. But I mean, I wasn't sophisticated in any way. I was a little boy. But I had the sense that I was on hallowed ground. I had, even as a young kid, my parents took me there. You had a sense of kedusha. You had a sense of this is not ground like any other ground. And when my wife and I were there today, there were some people talking, not at all inappropriately, but they were talking amongst themselves. And my wife said to me, it should be asur, it should be forbidden to speak here. It should be silent here. Because she just wanted to take it in. But what I noticed was the number of young people who were there. Some of them probably soldiers, many of them not. But it's a young generation that, look, when people got called up to Gaza, they've done 200, 250, 300 days. I'll give you an example of the ways in which I think they're just, first of all, in the book, I wasn't talking about the war. The book came out long before the war. But what I pointed out in the book is that I think fundamentally Israeli Judaism is fundamentally a nationalist project in which people like you, Rabbi Azari, are trying to inject an element of religious and spiritual life into people that may not have it. But it's the nationalism that fuels the engine here. Whereas in America, I think the engine that is fueled is fundamentally, not only, but fundamentally a religious engine, meaning it's the shul, it's the synagogue.
So let's go from here for a second, Daniel, to the question that I've heard from a Reform rabbi that I've met, as you met, not breakfast today, but few days ago. The difference is said between our young generation is the question of how we look upon morale, how we look upon who we are from that perspective, what is right and what is wrong. Can you talk a little bit about that? The soldier that goes to Gaza and understand the world from a certain perspective, and the guy that sits in New York in the community of your rabbi or my rabbi, your friends or my friend. Why to hold a gun? Why to shoot? Why to do this or that? I mean, this grape is growing in this perspective.
But that, I think, is the nationalism. The nationalism issue. I don't agree that the issue is a moral divide. The vast majority of Israeli soldiers who go into Gaza take no pleasure at all at having to be at war and having to kill people. I mean, we hear terrible stories, and some of them are probably true, and some of them are not true. But the idea that the fundamental divide is about morality, I just disagree with. There's an implicit sense that we have a kind of a purist morality here in the United States, and over there, Israelis are sullied by the need to go to war, and so on and so forth. I just don't buy that in any way whatsoever. I think that the difference is people for whom being Jewish and being part of the Jewish people is more important than anything else, and people for whom it's not. And I think that's the fundamental difference. Everybody has a right to criticize Israel. You and I criticize Israeli leaders all the time, and we're very distraught about some of the things that are happening in the country, both in the political and religious level, and in other ways as well. But what I think we would say is that the lens through which we view the world is that what is most important to us as human beings is our being Jews. And then second to that is our being Israeli Jews, because we see the enterprise of building a Jewish state as the place that is most likely to guarantee the future of the Jewish people. I think that what separates young people, and I'll tell you a humorous thing in a minute, but I think what separates the young people is who understands that when the call comes, you go home, you get your uniform, and you go into battle, and you may die. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them have been killed, and there's this book that maybe you've seen, you've probably seen it, Imatem Korim et Zeh, if you're reading this. And it's the book of all of these letters that soldiers had in their pockets to their parents, their wives, their whoever. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back, and here's what I want you to know. And they all say, I mean, almost all of them say, I want you to, of course you're going to be sad, but I don't want you to spend your life wallowing in grief. And I want you to know, so many of these letters say, I died doing what I wanted to do more than anything else, and that is protecting and defending the Jewish people. And I just think that that fundamental instinct is an instinct that it's very hard to pass on in a setting in which it's not the nationalist thrust that is at the core. Now, nationalism has many, many, many problematic dimensions to it, right? I mean, if you get nationalism unfettered, you end up with Ben Gvir. If you get nationalism unfettered, you end up with, people in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank attacking totally innocent Palestinians, and it's sickening. It's disgusting. Anything in the world unfettered, taken to its natural extreme, is problematic. Anything is problematic. So, but I don't want to judge the nationalism of Israel by looking at the bad apples. I want to look at the barrel of the apples, and fundamentally, what I think the barrel of apples here has produced is a very vibrant, deeply committed Jewish life. And I think, the humorous, quasi-humorous thing, I was talking to a woman who's got a very close friend who works for Birthright here in Israel. And Birthright, as you know, had 3,000 people here who were stuck because the war started, their Birthright trips were over, the airlines closed, and parents were going bananas, as you can only imagine. And in the end, Birthright got 3,000 kids out by boat. And it was a whole to-do. There's not a lot of boats hanging around, taking people to Cyprus, and they had to get Navy escorts, which they had to pay the Navy for, and it was a whole to-do. And I said to her, I can only imagine those American parents, the kinds of questions that they asked. And she burst out laughing, and she said, when they sent out the email telling parents, we've got them all on boats, they're leaving tomorrow, they're going to be in Cyprus at time X, Y, or Z, a lot of the emails came back asking, how is the Wi-Fi on the boat? And I thought, okay, I mean, our kids go into Gaza without their phones. They don't need Wi-Fi because they take their phones away from them. And again, it's a trivial thing, but your kid is being saved from a war that a lot of other kids are fighting in. While these kids are being escorted out by boat, other 18 and 19 and 20 and 20-year-old men and women are above the skies of Tehran. And so you ought to be at least a little humbled, it seems to me, when you know that other 22-year-olds are over the skies of Iran. Maybe you just write back and say, thank you for getting my kid out. And for however many hours it is on the boat to Cyprus, so maybe the Wi-Fi is not going to be that great. And again, I'm being a little bit harsh here, but I'm saying that I think to say that the issue is the moral divide really irks me, because there's an implicit sense that there's a purer kind of morality on American soil where you don't have to do all the dirty things of protecting yourself. And I would say that there's a deep moral core to knowing who you are and to being willing to protect and defend your people.